Hi, I'm Lilith Starr, and I'm a satanic writer and also a member of the Satanic Temple. Also, I started the Satanic Temple of Seattle in 2014, and I served as its chapter head till 2019. So, I want to talk today about some of my writing. The first thing I want to talk about is the first book I published, which is The Happy Satanist, Finding Self-Empowerment. I published this in 2015, and it's a collection of essays, and really it came about at a time when I was just finding Satanism, and it details not only my own personal story of how I found Satanism, but also how I used it for my recovery from addiction, and also, I approach several different subjects through the lens of Satanism. And I also had some general information in there about what I believed Satanism to be. When I started these essays, there was really only one type of Satanism, and that was LaVeyan Satanism, based on the Satanic Bible by Anatole. And that's where I got my start. I read the Satanic Bible. I was never involved with Church of Satan. Um, what I drew on was simply the book, the Satanic Bible. So if you notice, there are some references to LaVey in my book, but in general, I really took away from LaVeyanism compassion, like self-compassion, and along with that, self-empowerment, as in you are your God, you are your own higher power. And that was a tremendously freeing philosophy for me because I had 17 years of addiction. I had destroyed my life with drugs, and I had internalized all those messages that said there was something wrong with me, and society was better than I was. What happened was I met my current partner, Eric Black, and I fell madly in love with him, and we started out on our journey together, and we just had a hell of a time. We couldn't find housing. Um, we traveled from our little rural town down to the Bay Area, where housing is incredibly expensive, and we couldn't find any, and we ended up homeless on the streets. And it was at that time that I was also kind of going crazy from not having my meds that I couldn't get while homeless. And I was just at my rope's end. So um, someone finally got us into a hotel room um, for about a month, and it was at that time that I read the Satanic Bible. And I read it, and I really had this epiphany that maybe society was having troubles, not just myself. And maybe I was worthy of that self-compassion and sort of taking the reins of my own life. And so that was the impetus for the book, for the beginnings of my satanic conversion. I also talked a lot in the book about basically my recovery. So I had been going to Narcotics Anonymous. It's a 12 steps program, as you might guess from the title, for 9 years, trying to get rid of this awful addiction. And I just wasn't able to do it no matter how hard I worked their program. But their program is all about giving yourself and your life and your will over to a higher power, however you understand that higher power. But they used God, in all their literature as the higher power. And, I just didn't believe in a God, no matter what it was. So I felt powerless, as one of the steps in NA is admitting you're powerless. And I felt powerless over my addiction, and I just couldn't shake it. So when I finally found Satanism, I finally realized that, hey, I don't need to surrender my own power to something external. I have all that power within myself. And that was the beginning of my journey to finally leaving drugs behind and starting a new life with my partner. I also talked a lot in the book about basically like demystifying Satanism, my satanic beliefs. Like I said, I started from LaVey's Satanic Bible, but the direction I went in was very much in the direction of the Satanic Temple. And by the time that I had published this book in 2015, I had been a chapter head in a Satanic Temple chapter for 9 months. So really that flavored the whole book. A lot of the essays that I included at the later end of it came from that mindset. And also my self-compassion that I had found, with LaVeyanism dovetailed really nicely with the compassion that is at the center of the Satanic Temple. So I personally didn't see any, like conflict inside myself. So, I went with that Satanic Temple identification and I really ran with it. So I covered subjects like climate change, the just world fallacy, um, just sort of reason-based ideas looking at various issues through the lens of Satanism, censorship, um, fear versus compassion. I also talked there's a little bit about magic in there, and you have to understand that is strictly non-theistic magic, as LaVey sort of defined it, as it works on your own psyche. So, the Satanic Temple and myself, we don't use those words magic anymore. We do have rituals, but it's not quite the same thing. So you'll see a little bit of the LaVeyan influence through there, where the rituals are really based on like will, like directing your will and sort of using ritual to achieve that. But in general, this book kind of morphed into my ideas based on the Satanic Temple, and I was able to get it out at a time that was pretty early on in TST's development. I had started one of the first 5 chapters, so things were really growing and changing, and it was very exciting. And I've heard from a lot of people who have read this book and they seem to love this book. They've given this book to family members who were curious about Satanism, and I'm incredibly honored by that. Anytime anyone decides to read my book, I feel very honored by that. So I think I've heard a lot of people enjoy it because it's very raw, it's very intimate and very personal. I usually speak in my writing from a very personal standpoint. I focus on my own experience, and also I'm interested in other Satanists' personal experiences. So that's where a lot of the core of my writing comes from. You'll also see a little bit of Zen Buddhist influence in the Happy Satanist. I had, sort of dabbled in Zen Buddhism for a lot of my life and meditated on a regular basis. And today I also meditate, although it's not Buddhist, it's just mindfulness meditation. And that really helps with my depression because I have really pretty severe depression and anxiety. I have found some meds that work. I do have therapy, but I still struggle greatly. And in addition to the depression, I also have really bad chronic pain. So I'm always hurting. My back always hurts no matter what. And sitting up really kills my back. And that's been hard to write with because I can't really write without sitting up. So I've had to limit my writing to like a half hour, 45 minutes every day. But even within that, I've been really fired up to get my ideas out and also to encourage other people to get their ideas out. Satanism isn't really a top-down religion. We do have a leader, leaders and spokespeople, and of course, leaders within the organization, and they're all doing wonderful jobs. But it doesn't necessarily like come down as edicts from on high. What Satanism is what we are all doing. All of us who are practicing Satanists, we are building this religion as it grows. And it's a very exciting time to be in this religion as it's, is still very young, and things are still changing, and I really get the sense that all of us are working towards making this better and better um, as we go along. So I'm also really interested in seeing other people write, whether it's blogs or posts or books. You know, I want to see what other people have to say also. Um, so I also, on an ongoing basis, I've been keeping a blog. You can find it at lilithstarr.com, and that's my website, and my blog is on there. I really cover a wide range of subjects with that. I have a lot of writing on community. Community is something that I'm really passionate about. Um, you know, I've really been looking for a place to belong my whole life. I've been the outcast, the pariah. You know, I was that one kid in school that everybody picks on, and I just couldn't find my people really. But when I started meeting other Satanists, I was just blown away by how cool they were, and how funny and smart and courageous. You know, it takes a lot of courage to be a Satanist. So, you know, all of that. And then with the temple, there's just so much compassion. You know, we live by, you know, a pretty good ethical system, and that shows in the way that we interact with each other. And to be part of a community that is so close knit and loving and compassionate and welcoming and warm, it's just been amazing. It's completely changed my life. I don't know what I would do without it. The community has helped me a lot. I'm very poor because I'm disabled and I can't really work. And earlier this summer, our house burned down in a fire. And uh, almost immediately, the satanic community jumped into action, and they raised enough money from people everywhere to help us get into a new place. We found a new place through somebody in our chapter, and people in our chapter helped us move. And that just really brought home to me how awesome this community is. So I tend to write about community quite a bit. I also just kind of have, you know, check-ins on my personal journey, how my Satanism is changing. You know, if I start thinking about a certain topic with the satanic bent, I will write about that on the blog. There's a number of interviews on there with other practicing Satanists because, like I said, I'm really interested in what other people are doing as well. So I have interviews on, you know, like people's altars. Also, I have a long series on coming out as a Satanist because that's a big decision. And, you know, everyone has a different take on that. And I wanted to hear from people about what their experiences are. So that's on the blog. There's also, recently I published an interview article on, you know, how people chose their pseudonym. So I'm always trying to add content there. So, you know, go check it out. You can also, there's also links to buy my book on that site. And that brings me to something I'm super excited about, and that's that I'm very close to publishing a new book. This book is going to be an introduction to satanic practice. It's wholly on the TST side. You know, I left Levianism, you know, behind long ago. So anyway, so it's a fairly comprehensive, basically, overview of what satanic practice entails. And it's written, again, from my personal perspective, not as some official statement. But I really wanted to, you know, like if I had a friend who didn't know anything about Satanism but was really interested, then this would be the kind of book that I would give to them, where it talks about like kind of the narrative of Satan, where that comes from, the narrative that we sort of, you know, guide our practice by, goes into each of the 7 tenets as our core ethical system. I also talk about reclaiming that role of the outcast. I've definitely heard that from many, many Satanists, that they have felt like the outcast for whatever reason. So I talk about that, reclaiming that power, and I also use specific examples, so satanic feminism, queer Satanism, and I also talk about free thinkers and atheists. Um, and then there's the second half of the book is very much like a practical guide. So I talk about tools that you might choose to use in your practice. Of course, all this is not something that I'm telling you you have to do. It's basically, these are tools that you can use in your tool chest to build your own practice however you want to build your practice. So I have a section on Satanic Symbology, just covering the most well-known symbols, and also creating satanic ritual. Um, that talks about how we approach ritual, um, you know, how it can help in your practice, and some guidelines on, maybe starting to create some. I also really recommend Shiva Honey's excellent book, The Devil's Tome, as a really good in-depth look at satanic ritual, non-theistic satanic ritual. I also talk about, taking action to fight against tyranny. Obviously, that is a big part of our religious practice, is to stand up for justice and, fight against arbitrary authority and tyranny. And I think that's especially important right now as we're seeing theocracy just sweep through our government and seize power. So, that's something I really want to inspire people to fight. And then I also have a whole section on building community, finding community, helping build it, what kind of activities you might do, what your leadership might look like. Um, if you're actually building a community, of course, you're going to want to rely on your international council contact as your main mentor. But these are just my thoughts from having built a community from the ground up. I also wanted to hear, from other people about their practice. So there's a pretty extensive section of interviews with other Satanists. I also wanted to show people what rituals look like. So there's a section with a number of sample rituals, just so you can see, how other people have created their own rituals and maybe get some ideas for your own. It also has recommended reading and satanic holidays. So this is quite a large book, much larger than the Happy Satanist. Right now it's looking like it's going to be over 400 pages, and it'll be available in print and ebook, just like the Happy Satanist. It's already written. The manuscript is completely done and copy edited and finalized. So right now it's in the hands of my designer, and we're hoping to release it by the end of the year, but I'll be happy if we hit January or February. But again, if you go to my website, I'll have an announcement for when it's ready, and maybe you'll want to give it a try. So anyway, I'm really, really thankful that I've had this chance to serve the community, both as a chapter head, and also as an author who apparently, people have told me that my writing is very accessible, and that makes me feel really good. Um, I'd like to make it easy for people to understand what we're about. And, this is kind of, I can't go out and protest because of my disabilities. And I feel so helpless watching our politics right now and watching theocracy and autocracy just take over in so many places. And it's been extremely frustrating and depressing to see that happen and not feel like I can do anything. But I do feel like this is the one thing I can do. I can write. And in writing, I might be able to inspire more people to revolt, to think about, hey, yeah, I will stand up and fight this. And also, I want to give other people hope. A lot of people have been rejected and feel hopeless and disconnected and lonely, and I want to show them that there's a community out there that will accept them just as they are, whether they're trans or gay or a sex worker or whatever. We don't care. That's not material to us, we welcome everyone. And I want people to understand that there's a home out there for them in our community. So, yep, I'm just really grateful to have had this chance to be part of the community and part of the discourse. I was extremely pleased to get the Anatole France Literary Excellence Award earlier this year for my writing from TSD. So I'm really honored by that. And anyway, I hope you will think about writing or doing your own art, whatever kind of medium you might work in, and adding to that discourse and reaching out and finding other people in our community. And so anyway, thank you very, very much for your time, and have a good night.